Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers with Christopher Anderson. Wednesdays during the Noon Report, we tackle the tough topics facing today's families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. And Chris, today, much like the last episode, you have another great guest on with us.
Yes, Brandon, indeed we do. Today we have Matthew Mattera. Matthew is a Navy serviceman, but he's been touched in his own family by suicide. But yet his story is an amazing story of how God's grace and how God's provision, empowering the Holy Spirit in him, got him through this. So here is some of that interview.
Tell us a little bit about how suicide has touched your life.
Over the span of about 30 years, I lost 6 people in my family to suicide and self-harm. When I was 6 years old, I lost my dad to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Fast forwarding, I'm already in the military. This is 2004 now. I was stationed overseas with my family, my wife and my oldest daughter at the time. And I get an American Red Cross message that my younger brother, my only sibling, who had never met our dad, my mom was only a few months pregnant with him when my dad took his life, he had died from an overdose. And there's the self-harm piece. So there's my dad, my little brother. Moving forward, a few months after my brother passes away, I find out that an uncle of mine on my mom's side of the family had taken his own life. I was very close to this uncle. So that's 3 losses already. And then a few years later, a cousin of mine, just a beautiful young lady on my dad's side of the family, she took her own life in 2007. But then moving forward from there, in 2012, I'm again doing the nation's business. I'm out operational, and I get another email that an uncle of mine, uncle I was very close to, had taken his own life. And as painful as all those were, especially with my dad and my little brother, and my uncles and all that, it was really something that I would not wish on my worst enemy. It was the loss of my oldest daughter, Elizabeth, in 2015. She tragically and violently ended her own life the same way that my dad ended his own life back in 1984. I found her shortly after she had shot herself. So it's really been a scourge that has touched every branch of my family tree. So I have committed myself to what I call as a war on the suicide problem set, and really bringing a comprehensive, holistic approach to this scourge that has just laid waste and decimated so many people in our culture today.
I can't really imagine the amount of pain you've had to go through with each of these incidences, but yet I bet I'm safe to say that it's only been through the power and the grace of God that has gotten you through it. Is that accurate?
Oh, I wouldn't be standing here on this side of eternity if it wasn't for that anchor of immovable hope, which I write about. I tell the reader about this divine golden thread. I talk about this divine invisible hand that has just been over my life in a very specific relationship with a very specific Father, not a nebulous, warm, fuzzy feeling out there, some vague mantras of self-reassurance. This is a relationship I have with our Creator God that breathed life into you, breathed life into me, into everybody. I carry his fingerprints, as do you and everybody else. The Bible says he's fathers of the fatherless and a husband of the widows. He has been my father, and I have depended on him. And when I lost my brother, I was really in a crisis of faith, so to speak, and I was mad at him. I was mad at God. You're so good. How could you let something so bad happen? I'll call you when I need you, in case of emergency, break glass. Over the years and through the other losses after my brother, God just was always there and said, okay, I understand. We say some irreverent prayers sometimes. And David, you read the Psalms, those are pretty robust prayers. God, why turn your back on me? Why are my enemies coming after me? Where are you at, God? But he's venting, right? And God likes those genuine prayers. When I lost my daughter, by that point in time, I had been key and strategically placed with good brothers in arms as well as Christian brothers in faith to prepare me for that, really. So you're absolutely right. God being there is number one.
How did God use people to reach out to you and to help support you and the family during these losses?
Having a cadre of brothers and sisters that we were able to lean on. I talk about having fist-sized holes in your shield where the enemy has just knocked the snot out of you and you're flat on your back. It is so important to surround yourself with men and women, brothers and sisters that can pick you up off the mat and carry you through that. And that's been something that has just been able to be connected and not just say some prayers that are robust to God, but also just be able to vent. Hey, when you walk through things like this, you're going to say some language. It's not pretty stuff. It's painful. And it causes you to question your faith. It causes you to question just your reason for being here. That first Father's Day, after I lost Elizabeth. So Elizabeth passed away in May of 2015. Guess what? A month later is Father's Day. That was a hard Father's Day. And I'll just tell listeners this, that I'm so glad that my wife went and checked on me, number one. And then two, that she was able to call up a brother of mine. I talk about this Christian brother in the book very strongly. My friend Tim is a guy that, fellow Navy warrior, right? We've done operations together, been deployed, but he's also a brother and warrior in faith. And so it is important to have a strong cadre. You cannot do life alone. You cannot.
You've been listening to another edition of Real Answers with Christopher Anderson. It airs Wednesdays during the Noon Report. We tackle the tough topics facing today's families with Christian counselor Christopher Anderson.